Imagine being murdered by your best friends because they were jealous of you. Michelle Missy Avila was from San Fernando Valley, California. She was described as a popular girl in her school. She was known to be extremely beautiful and outgoing, but because of this, she got a lot of attention from the boys, and therefore a lot of the girls in her high school made fun of her and bullied her because they were jealous of her. Michelle did have a really good friend named Karen Severson. Karen and Michelle had been friends since they were 8 years old, and this was about the time they were 16. Karen would constantly stick up for Michelle and even get into fights to protect Michelle when she was getting bullied. Now, Karen was also picked on a lot, but for other reasons than Michelle's. Unfortunately, when Michelle kept getting more and more popular, Karen became extremely jealous of her and started spreading rumors about her, stating that she slept with everybody's boyfriends and that she was not to be trusted, etc. The girls' friendship started to deteriorate, and they weren't as close, especially after Karen had to drop out of school after she became pregnant. Things got even worse when Michelle started dating a guy named Randy, who was a party animal. He was popular, but was always out and drinking, etc., to the point that Michelle couldn't take it, and she ended up breaking up with Randy. Fast forward a little while, Karen started dating Michelle's ex, Randy. It was stated that later on, at a high school party they were all at, Karen became extremely mad at Michelle because she saw Randy pulling Michelle onto his lap, and Karen got super jealous despite the fact that Michelle told Randy to leave her alone and went up to Karen and told Karen that she needed to break up with Randy because he wasn't a good guy. Instead of listening to Michelle, Karen got mad at Michelle and stopped talking to her. There was multiple situations in which Michelle and Karen were seen arguing, and one of the worst ones was when Karen threatened to hit Michelle over the head with a beer bottle. She ended up proceeding to do so and then threw Michelle on the ground and punched her repeatedly. Somehow, the girls got past that and continued to be friends. Unfortunately, only 10 days after that fight, Michelle was found dead in a park. Even though this is a 3-minute video, I'm out of time, so I'm gonna go post part 2 right now. On October 2nd, 1985, Michelle had ended up telling her mother Irene that her friend Laura Doyle was going to come by and pick her up. A few hours after Michelle had been picked up, Laura Doyle ended up calling Michelle's mother Irene and asking if she could speak to Michelle. This ended up baffling Irene, who was Michelle's mother, because to her understanding, Laura and Michelle had been together. This is when Laura had told Michelle's mother that when they went to the park, Laura had dropped off Michelle, who was speaking to 3 young men who were in a blue Camaro, and that she left her friend there to go put gas in her car, and by the time she came back to her friend Michelle, her and the boys were gone. Irene's mother was extremely worried and went ahead and filed Michelle as a missing person. Unfortunately, only 3 days after she was reported missing, Michelle's body was found dead in a river in the park. The cause of death was determined to be drowning. She was found still in the water with all of her hair chopped off with a log on top of her. Irene, who was Michelle's mother, was devastated, but she did say that Michelle's 2 friends, who were Karen and Laura, were extremely supportive and helpful throughout the whole investigation, and that Karen even ended up moving in with her to her home and was obsessed with trying to figure out what happened to her daughter. Karen, on the other hand, says that never happened, that she was with Irene and would go to her house often, but that she never actually moved in with her. The police never suspected Karen and Laura to be the persons responsible for Michelle's death. That was until about 2 years into the investigation, where Laura had a different story and another girl named Ava came into play and spoke to the authority. In July of 1988, a girl named Ava, who was also friends with these girls, came forward and stated that the day that Laura picked up Michelle, they were not alone. She stated that herself, Ava, and Karen were in the car following behind the 2 other girls. They got to the park, Ava waited in the car. Karen, Laura, and Michelle went for a walk, and eventually Michelle stated she didn't want to walk anymore, where all of a sudden both of the girls started attacking her and cutting off all of her hair. She was then forced to get into the water, where she was drowned by Laura. In March of 1990, both Laura and Carrie were found guilty and sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Despite that, Karen was released in December of 2011, where she only served about 23 and a half years in prison. Laura had only served 22 years and was released in 2012. Now, Karen even went out and tried to write a book after prison about what happened in her life in prison and after, etc. Thankfully, though, Michelle's family sued, they won, and they get all the profits from the book. Karen even went onto the Dr. Phil show to explain her side of things. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below.